Man, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of EOS. Tonight at Jake, man, I'm rocking with y'all and y'all rocking with me. I have a special guest for y'all today. I have somebody that is unlike any other guest that I've had before. Go ahead and introduce yourself, bro.
Hey, how y'all doing tonight? My name is Philip McGinnis. I am a retired captain with the Department of Corrections. Spent 25 years. Worked my ways up through the rank and retired last year.
Now, that is a long time to be employed with the Department of Corrections. And I have been trying to find a staff member that I can reach out to. Since my EOS, I've had a lot of staff reach out to me, but they're still currently employed with the Department of Corrections. They didn't want to, put their name out, but they saluted to what I'm doing with the channel. Some of the staff I actually personally knew. We did not know each other, but I came across your YouTube channel, and I decided to reach out because, like I was saying before we started this video, I feel it's important to bring all perspectives to light, whether it's the inmates, whether it's other staff. Like I have Michelle Fourier on my channel. She was a mental health specialist. And now I have a retired captain. I'm very interested to hear your story. What year was it that you started working for the Department of Corrections?
1993.
I was born in 94. That's some, that's some crazy shit. What how was it? How different was the Department of Corrections back in the 90s to how it is now?
Oh, when I first started, believe it or not, it's like unless you kind of knew somebody there, they really didn't talk to you too much. I was kind of an outsider. I wasn't raised up in the small towns. I come from California. So when I started there, I was totally green. I had no clue. I didn't know anybody. And it was basically until you kind of proved yourself that you weren't scared or you weren't a snitch, people didn't associate with you. But once you fit in, it was more family, and it was a team as opposed to a bunch of individuals working against each other the way it is now.
And, I've heard stories from guys that were locked up for, long times. And they would tell me that there was a different respect level between the staff and the inmates, and that a lot of the staff had the inmates respect because of the fact that they weren't scared, because of the fact that some of these guys carried themselves in a I'll take my belt off and we can step into the mop closet type of way. Can you agree that it was somewhat like that back then?
Oh, absolutely. There was. It's like you can't walk into a place like that, or even now with some of the old timers, you cannot walk in there just because you got a uniform on, demand respect. You got to earn that. Even if you're on the street, you got to earn respect from a man. So yeah, things definitely were like that. It's like, I've heard of instances where staff and an inmate might have had a disagreement and took care of things. And then after it was done, it was dead. Mutual respect, win, lose, or draw.
And do you feel that that was a more productive way of handling things versus the way it is now?
Well, of course it was against the rules.
Yeah.
I mean, of course they're never going to condone that type of behavior, and they never have anyway. Sometimes it's just what it comes down to, man. I mean, you can sit there and try to get somebody to follow the rules or do what you want them to do, or vice versa. It may want something from you, and it's just a personality conflict. It's nothing personal. Y'all just don't click or whatever, and that may be the only thing that gets through to each of them.
Did you see a difference in abuse when it came to the staff on inmates from the time period in which there was no cameras until the time period that there is now? Because I can't imagine back then people are writing grievances up and things like that.
No, when the cameras came, the grievances went through the roof, and so did the allegations. And a very small percentage, very small percentage were actually substantiated. But for the most part, it's like some people got rolled up, and when they write the grievances, you have to investigate. As a white shirt, you have to investigate. So that's kind of like taking time away from other stuff you could be doing, because now you got to go watch video, then you got to go interview people, then you got to go sit there and type up your report, then you got to turn it in, get witness statement forms. It's just busier work, and a lot of the inmates knew that. They knew that some things were frivolous, and so they just make people work. Just kind of like if an inmate's kicking on the door, running the cell traction, oh, I'm gonna make y'all work today. same kind of thing. But yeah, before the cameras, I mean, you'd still have your writ writers and stuff like that, but it's like there wasn't a lot of allegations of either staff abuse or misconduct or anything like there is now with the cameras.
And was that like, did that have anything to do with inmates in fear of retaliation, or was it just because in those times things were just handled differently, like you said?
It was a different breed of officer and inmate back then. And like you say, you was born in '94, stuff like that. It's like it's all on how the person carries themselves. A lot of the people that come in now, the officers and inmates, they both think that they're owed something. Like you're lucky we're here or something like that. And that's the difference between you have inmates and you have convicts. And it's like if you were around any old timers, you know what I'm talking about there.
Yeah.
But it's that there's fewer and fewer convicts and more inmates, and there's fewer good officers that are just come there, do their job, stuff like that. And you have officers that come in now, you can't tell them anything, they don't care, they'll come in late, their just attitude is poor. So, just like you've seen some inmates do the same thing. So it's just a different breed on both ends, inmates and officers.
Now, how many different institutions did you work at?
Just one. I spent my entire career at one.
Just that one. And are you able to say which one that was?
It was Union Correctional out in Raiford.
How has the time changed at that specific location? Because I believe back in the day it was Union, it was FSP, and maybe like one other one. And that was the spot where all the heavyweights, all the the legendary Florida convicts went. How was that time difference then?
Believe it or not, it's like a lot of the stories you hear about old timers that come through there, notorious people and stuff like that. It's like you'd have your handful of problems out, you're out of a few inmates, but for the most part, the ones that had that reputation, when they got there, they were chill. Believe it or not, it's like they really were. It's like we had everything there. We had the general population, we had the CM, we had the PM, we had the AC, the DC, we had death row, and then later on, we incorporated mental health, and we incorporated, inpatient mental health, CM mental health, stuff like that. And then we converted from young inmates to our general population being 50 and over. So now we had, more medical stuff. We got older inmates and things like that.
And how old were you when you started working for the Department of Corrections?
21.
So, I mean, I went in at 18, and my first year, I was slashed with a razor. I was hit with a lock. I got poked up with a fence poker, nothing too crazy. But immediately I was thrown into the violence. How soon was it before you started seeing the bad side of prison?
I might have been there maybe 4 or 5 months when I had my first use of force. And I locked up 6 inmates before lunchtime, and they were all fighting over a punk. And you've seen people get stabbed. It's like you've seen people, hang themselves, cut themselves, die. You've seen it all. It's like the one downside to the Department of Corrections, and I'm sure it's the same for inmates and officers, is you see so much, you experience so much, you became desensitized to things. If you see something on the street, you see somebody, get run over by a truck, you're just, he got run over by a truck. It doesn't bother you like the general population because there's nothing you haven't seen or experienced. And it's weird to sit there and try to explain that to people unless they've actually been behind there.
I feel that 100% because I find that difficulty when I do speak to people that don't share similar experiences. And it's much easier. It's even therapeutic to come onto this channel, and when I bring on other people that have done time and we speak and we go over some of the things that we've seen. How do these things, after 25 years, how does seeing all of that affect you now?
I look back on it, I mean, believe it or not, it's like I retired without a habit. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do drugs, I don't have blood pressure problems, I'm not on any meds. And when I went to my doctor, last year or something like that, they asked me, they said, how did you spend your whole career in there without any kind of issues? And I'm just like, I just knew what to say. I don't give a fuck. I'm not going to sit there and let that place stress me out. I've seen staff die. I've seen inmates die. I was bound and determined I wasn't fit to die. I wasn't finna let nothing stress me out or get me like that not working out there. I had more issues with staff than I ever had with inmates. Believe that or not.
No, that's crazy. That's actually one of the first things I picked up on watching some of your videos on your channel, and I didn't expect that at all. Could you actually elaborate on some of the issues that you have with staff and some of the issues that are going on between staff inside of the D.O.C? Because to me, being an inmate and some of the spots I hit, we never really saw too much conflict between the staff members. And we heard the rumors that a lot of the staff members were in their own gangs at certain locations, KKK, this, that, and the third. So we always looked at it like, oh, staff is just another gang. You know what I mean? And definitely with you being a captain, a white shirt, you were the one on the compound nobody wanted to fuck with. Nobody wanted to disrespect the white shirt because the sergeants and the officers are going to come through like assassins, and you're pretty much fucked. So what are the issues that go on within staff?
Okay, well, let me hit on something right there. It's like, here's one thing that has changed too. When I first started there, sergeants were gods. Sergeants did your post assignment. Sergeants approved your days off. They walked on water. As an officer, you never talked to a white shirt unless you were in trouble. You didn't just walk up and have an idle conversation. Nowadays, a sergeant ain't nothing but a CO. They do all the CO work. Anything that doesn't get done, all they do is pass it on up to somebody else. If the sergeants don't do it, they're going to make the lieutenants do it. The lieutenants don't do it, they make the captains do it instead of holding people accountable, have the accountability for their actions and stuff. That's a big change that happens now. And that's gone on. Now, see, the thing with staff now is like everybody wants to be in charge. Everybody wants to run something, but yet they don't either put in for it. They all want to have like their 2 cents. The administrations don't take into anybody else's perspective. It's just like they just hammer down, you will do this, you will do this, you will do this, you will do this. If they agree with it or not, they don't care. If it comes from high up, region or something like that, it's like, just do it at all costs, don't care. They don't care that every institution in the state of Florida is way understaffed. They just keep putting more and more on the plate and want them to get it done with what they have. When I ran my shift, I had the least amount of officers, but I also kept the least amount of overtime because me personally, I was involved in my shift and my rosters and stuff like that because the administration is not going to sit there and go to my lieutenant or my sergeant going, why is this? They're going to ask me. So you had to be involved with it. It used to be where you could kind of like, as a captain or the lieutenant, just kind of step back and let things run. You can't do that anymore. It's funny. It's like you've seen it. Other people have seen it. It's like white shirts back in the day used to just run around and chase women, sniff seats. The days of sniffing seats, those are long far gone. You actually got to do your work. You actually got to make sure everything's done. You got to be the first one there. You got to be the last one gone. Then they tell us or told us in these meetings that the brand new officers, that the seasoned officer has to find a way to get along with them. They want the people that have been there forever to conform to the 18, 19, 20-year-old people and more or less kiss their butt to keep them working there so they won't quit, as opposed to looking out for more of the veteran staff. They want to appease the younger staff so they won't leave, as opposed to trying to retain veteran staff.
Wow. So it's basically just a huge issue with respect and respecting the chain of command.
Here's the thing now. It's like there's an officer, if there's an officer right now that has a problem with what the sergeant tells him to do, that officer or TEA, whatever, will call the warden and the warden will actually talk to him.
That's crazy.
It is. You bypass your sergeant, you bypass your lieutenant, your captain, the major, the colonel, you go straight to the warden. And then the bad part about it is a lot of wardens actually will pull that officer out and talk to him. They don't send it back down to find out what's going on and da-da-da. They just, they go ahead and appease them. So now, what does that tell that sergeant? I got no pull. This officer just went with the warden on me. So that creates resentment.
Definitely.
You want to sit there and train these people. And granted, they all need training. They really do. You want to train them, but yet you can't tell them anything. They're entitled, and they come in with an attitude that if they don't want to do something or they don't like something somebody says, they're going to call and tell.
Has none of the administration acknowledged the fact that being that staff is so understaffed and have a lot of these inner conflicts, that this also affects the inmate population. Because I mean, I've seen staff members work insane amounts of overtime. I've seen, you know, how it drains them, it drains their energy. But at the same time, it affects the inmates in the sense that if somebody wants to go psych, if somebody is having an issue, be it major or minor, the way they handle that issue can sometimes not be the professional way they're supposed to handle that issue. A lot of times they don't care, they don't got time for it, they don't want to hear it. So is this behavior really coming from the fact that there's so much disorganization within staff itself, or do the COs just not give a fuck?
A little of both. A little of both. You know, it's like a lot of people, they just come there, they're like, you know, hey, I'm just here for the money. I'm not doing anything. You can't tell me what to do because they're not going to fire me. They need people too bad. It's a revolving door. It used to be you had to pry people out of there. People didn't want to leave. People didn't want to retire because, like I said in the beginning, they had that family aspect. You know, everybody had each other's back. Inmates had inmates back. Officers had officers back. And you know, it's like you be around inmates. It's like, yeah, you're going to form certain bonds with certain inmates. You know, it's like you have your runners or your housemen or something like that. And you're going to get to know them. They're going to get to know you. It's like, it's just the way it is, whether you try to or not. And you kind of form these bonds, whether they're intended or not. So nowadays, it's like nobody has that family aspect. Nobody has the looking out for each other. It's just like everybody's working against each other. There's two trains going against it. You got the administration, you got the white shirts, then you got the sergeants and COs, and everybody can't mesh. They're not. And I don't know what the whole deal is. I don't know why. And you know, everybody kind of wants to say it's because of the age of the people and this and that. And I don't know. It may be. It's hard. It's like I don't think I'm that hard of a person to get along with. It's like I don't agree with some of the things, and I was the type that if I didn't agree with it, I'd let you know. I would do what you told me to do out of respect, but I'd still sit there and let you know my opinion. And at the end of the day, it's like, no matter what you say, I got to back your play, whether I agreed with it or not. But it got to the point where people who used to stand up for themselves and stand up for their staff and you know, stand up for what's right or stand up, you know, against what's wrong or whatever, that's frowned upon anymore. That used to be once respected, but they don't like that anymore. If you stand up for yourself or somebody else or go to bat for somebody, you're creating a problem.
Do you feel that with the drug epidemic inside of the Department of Corrections and how much staff are being arrested, are being kicked out, are being caught bringing in these drugs, bringing in these cell phones, do you feel that there is a percentage of staff that go overlooked because of the fact that staff is needed? And at the same thing with the abuse with the inmates, because I personally think that abusing an inmate it's less of an issue than bringing in drugs and phones. That's what I would assume. That's what I would believe, just from how common it was. I knew plenty of staff that would beat the shit out of us. It was more difficult to find one that would actually bring something in. Do you feel that also, the way everything is running, how they're needing people, how they're not getting rid of people, that has an effect on the abuse and the drugs as well?
Oh, I'm sure it does. People are tired. People are burned out. People are frustrated. They're fed up. And then people feed off of that. Other people, you know, so you'll have staff arguing with staff. You'll have staff arguing with inmates. Inmates arguing with staff. They're all going to feed off of each other. The drug thing, it's a serious issue. I mean, when I first started there, it's like the biggest thing would be like finding weed or coke. You know, now it's like everything's in smaller doses. Look at the fentanyl. You don't need any of that. Anybody can hide that. You know, and that's killing people. The K2, you know, that's everywhere. It's like, since they banned cigarettes, it's like you got to look for those. And yeah, it's like you see on the news just like I do. It's like every day you're going to sit there and pull up something on DC Web or news or whatever like that, and you're going to see an officer that was arrested for battery on an inmate, or arrested for bringing in drugs, or smuggling in cell phones, or, you know, dealing with them somehow. And I don't know. I mean, I really don't. It's like, because there's all the overtime in the world you want. All you got to do is basically show up. I mean, seriously, it's like anymore. It's like all you got to do is show up. You really don't even have to work. As long as you're there for the time, you can skate by. But it's like they're looking for that fast, easy money. But what a lot of them don't realize is that once you say yes, you got to keep going. Because the one time you say no, what you think's gonna happen? Inmate's gonna set you up.
Yeah.
You know, I don't condone it either way. It's like like I say, I ain't never done none of that. It's like I don't use drugs. I I don't smoke any of that kind of stuff. But it's like, do something else. It's like drugs ain't the answer. I mean, I understand you guys got time and try to occupy your mind and stuff like that, but you know, there's I don't like to see nobody flopping on the floor laying and puke just like you don't. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not the most sympathetic or empathetic person. Like I say, it's like, but it's like you still look at it, it's like, damn, that's messed up. You know, you don't want to see nobody like it, whether they're old, young, whatever. It's like, because they don't know what they're putting in their body.
Exactly.
But like you say, it's like the drugs, it's like, yeah, they're coming in all sorts of ways. It's not just staff. Yeah, there's dirty staff that bring it in. There's visitors that bring it in. You know, there's outside work crews that bring it in. You're never going to stop it. The only thing you can do is try to hinder it.
Definitely. One of the because I recently did an interview with the news, and they were asking me, you know, what do you think can be done about the drug epidemic? And the only thing that I could come up with logically, in my mind, is we're never going to stop people from selling drugs. We're never going to stop people that want the money. What I think could be done to positively affect the Department of Corrections is making it so that drug addicts and drug dealers are not treated the same way. We're not punishing the addicts the same way we're punishing the dealers. Therefore, they're not on the same compounds. If we treat addiction as a disease and get them help instead of sending them to prison, we're going to reduce the prison population, but we're also reducing the amount of people that are searching for these drugs, because there's always going to be someone there to hand the drugs to them, to feed their addiction. Do you think that something like that could be possible within the Department of Corrections or within the state of Florida itself, where instead of sending all the addicts to prisons, or a type of segregation unit within the prisons? Because in Florida, I mean, everybody just gets put together.
I mean, yeah, it's like they could do that. I don't think that it would be practical from a financial aspect with the state of Florida, seeing how stingy they are with money. But you also got to look at it like this. It's like, unless you pretty much put them on Alcatraz and the people that work there live there, you're always going to have somebody's going to bring something in. Whether it's visitor, whether it's free world people, whether it's staff, whether it's, you know, somebody bringing in, you know, stuff for the kitchen. You're never going to totally stop it. So you can put them in an inpatient facility for treatment. Okay, let's say it's like a regular rehab on the street. You go in for 30, 60, 90 days, you get clean, you know, you're still doing your therapy, you're still doing your counseling and all this. Well, even though you still got time, now they're going to ship you off to a regular institution. You're not going to do your whole sentence at that facility. So now you go to a regular institution where you have the drug dealers, where you got the predators, where you got, you know, the dope fiends and all this kind of stuff, and then they're going to fall right back into it. Or it's like, are they going to be strong enough to say no with the 30, 60, or 90-day program? Another problem, just like that, it's like that the state doesn't have anymore, is the vocational programs to teach y'all a trade.
Yeah.
Because when I first started there, they had like a small engine shop. They had, you know, different little vocational things, but now they say, you know, there's no money in the budget. They can't hire the instructors. They, you know, they don't have the money for the equipment and stuff like that. So they ended up doing away with them. So basically, you know, it's like you can work somewhere. It's like a UCI. It's like we had some pride plants where they printed out license plates, or they made metal furniture, or, you know, barbecue grills. There's no demand for that on the street. And that's a big problem. It's like when you go back out, somebody EOSs now, it's like you get a bus ticket and $100, but you ain't got no trade. You may have a GED. That's about all they offer anymore. So, you know, then you got to sit there and hope that one of those, you know, list of fast food restaurants that hire ex-felons will actually hire you. but it's like they don't have enough stuff to try to rehabilitate people. It's all about, you're in here, you're going to do your time, and that's pretty much it. Unless you sit there and go out of your way to try to get in an educational program, or try to be a law clerk, or something like that, to where maybe you can get something going on the street.
Now, what was it that made you, at 21 years old, want to work for the Department of Corrections?
Let me tell you, it's like back in 1993, I was working a job that was paying me $5.50 an hour. Well, somebody had told me, well, back then minimum wage was like $3.50, something like that. So anyway, it was ridiculous. So somebody said and told me, they said, hey, why don't you try the prison? I said, okay, I heard of it. I went out there and I actually applied, didn't get hired, because you didn't know anybody. Back then it was real good old boy. You really had to know somebody. So I actually paid to go through school myself, and I got hired 3 weeks before I graduated. Well, my first check, I was getting paid $7.97 an hour. So I had come from a $5.50 an hour job to $7.97, and I thought I was balling. My first paycheck I brought home was $525. I thought I was going to buy a condo and a Cadillac. So I said, you know what? It's like, I don't know if this is really my cup of tea. I didn't know anybody. It's like, let me just figure out what else going on and move on to something else. So I said I was going to be here about 6 months. Well, I was there 2 months. We got a raise. Okay, cool. 6 months later, got another raise. 6 months later, got another raise. Okay, might as well hang out. They keep paying. So it's like they did that. It's like we used to get, sometimes we got, bi-yearly raises. Sometimes we just got yearly raises. Other times we got bonuses. And then when the raises all stopped, now it's like, you're grown, you got, a house, you got cars, you got bills, stuff. So it's like now you really can't go anywhere. And in most of the places where like a prison is around, nothing else in that area pays what the prisons do. Even though the prisons don't pay great, nothing compares to it. So you're kind of stuck. But yeah, I never talked to my career counselor in high school about working at a prison. Never.
What was some of the things that you grew to like, working within the Department of Corrections? I mean, I'm sure you built friendships and relationships with the staff members and got to know people. And how was the process of going through the ranks? Is that something that took years to do, or did it more or less come quick with the raises?
Well, it's like you put in, it's like if you want to promote, then you fill out your paperwork, you put for promotion, you go out there, you interview, stuff like that. I was really happy as a CO. I was good. I worked with a good crew. We all got along, and just like, everything, it's like, somebody wants to promote and somebody else wants to promote, or somebody wants to, move a different post or whatever. So they kind of, we all kind of like split up. Some people quit, some people moved to other institutions, and, some people want to stay where they are. So I want to say right about 10 and a half years when I made sergeant with the state. And like I said, I was happy as a CO, but it's like, okay, well, let me try my hand at this. And then as a sergeant, I was a sergeant from 2004 to 2011 when I made lieutenant. So, that was a good 7.5 years. And then, I made lieutenant, and then I made captain. But at UCI, it's like we had so many different like missions that if you could work there, you could work anywhere, because we covered it all. We had death row, we had the CM, we had the mental health, we had the inpatient mental health, we had the GP, we had the AC, DC, CM 1, 2s, and 3s. We covered it all. So it's like if you could work there and work all those different posts and stuff like that, and I did transport too. So, that was a good job. And you just had, there was really never any post that you would get burned out on. It's like if you went here and you didn't like it, you could, ask to move over here, and you could, get a different spot and stuff like that. It wasn't like you were stuck inside all day or you were stuck outside all day, stuff like that. It's like, it was real versatile. So, it was a good place to work. And like I say, it's like you work different posts and you work with different officers, and there were some you wanted to work with and there were some you didn't want to work with. Just like there was inmates you wanted to be around and inmates you didn't want to be around. But one thing I did learn there is like you had some officers that were great in general population, absolutely run a dorm like there was no tomorrow. Then you had some that were great in confinement. I spent 11 straight years in confinement when I worked there between CO and sergeant. I spent 11 straight years. So then you had some that could work both GP and population, but you couldn't take the GP dude and swap him out with the confinement guy. That some people couldn't do it. So you had some that were great at GP, some that were great at confinement, some that were great at both, some that were great at death row, some were great at mental health. It was all on that person.
Did you yourself ever work inside a death row?